Welcome and greetings, zombie fans, to the 48th episode of Reanimated, the podcast about all things zombie, brought to you by Squarespace. My name is Stuart Tiffin. I am one of your co-hosts on the West Coast, and on the Eastern Coast is my invincible, I think I used that one already.
Invisible? Invisible? No?
It's my invisible co-host,
Woo!
H.A. Conrad. How are you today?
I am good. I'm very well. I am drinking my iced coffee,
Mmm,
and
tasty.
it is delicious.
I'm glad that we've both managed to bring it together for yet another podcast, working our way up to the big half century here.
Mm-hmm.
And for this episode, we are going to be reviewing Dock of the Dead, a documentary about zombies and zombies in media, kind of in our wheelhouse in a way. And we'll be talking about zombie news and, I don't know, the impending zombocalypse, perhaps. And none of this could we do without the help of our good old pals over there at Squarespace. Thank you, Squarespace, for being the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own website.
Yay, Squarespace. Yay.
Huzzah.
Woot.
First up in the news, here...
Oh, wait, are you going to give the code?
Oh, for frick. For frick. Users, listeners, users of our podcasts, because it is drug-like, can enter the code zombie, which is not case sensitive when you get to the checkout of, checking out for your website at Squarespace. And you can just type zombie on in there and you'll get 10% off. 10 whole percents. Zombie news. First up, we've got an article from PC Gamer from the 14th of August. This kind of blew my mind a little bit. Another Walking Dead video game. I know that HA, you've not played one of them.
Well, I've dabbled.
I think this will be like the fourth one, that like
Yeah.
different game. Telltale Games makes one that's very story based, and that's done very, very well. There have been a few mobile app games. There was another first person shooter that came and went, and now this is going to be, again, I think a first person shooter. Yep,
Mm.
co-op first person shooter, a la Left 4 Dead, another famous zombie video game. And the guys making this are the people who make Payday 2 and Payday, as it happens, which is a very intense cops and robbers first-person shooter co-op game. And so, high hopes, and the trailer is legitimately disturbing.
Hmm.
Did you? I guess you didn't get a chance to watch it.
No, I did. I just didn't really think it was any. I don't know. I didn't think it was any more or less disturbing than other things.
Maybe I'm just more it's attuned to the audio of a little girl
Maybe.
getting eaten by zombies than you are.
Perhaps. I guess the audio was kind of rough,
That's
but
messed
not.
up.
It is messed up, but par for the course. Am I getting I guess maybe I'm just getting like I'm not keyed into it as much.
Any little girls who listen to our podcast, do not go knock on HA's door in the
Apparently,
Zombocalypse, because she will have no problem listening to you getting eaten.
much like Bruce Campbell, apparently.
Yeah, more on that later in the broadcast.
uh,
So anyway, I'm pretty excited about this. I mean, we have seen zero gameplay, but these guys, Overkill, have a good track record. Their trailer shows that they are committed to making me freak out. And there's a special message from Robert Kirkman at the end of the trailer, where I think he's contractually obligated to say that he's excited about this, but he said he was excited about it. And then they released Lucille Negan's barbed wire covered baseball bat from the comic book Walking Dead later episodes as an item in Payday 2. So now bank robbers can go around beating up law enforcement officials with Negan's baseball bat. There was much rejoicing.
I can see that. No, I totally can. It's an
Yeah,
exciting thing.
it is. It's pretty cool. It's like there's a lot of this kind of crossover in gaming and in film, I guess too. So next up is a little item, but
Yes,
I
but
thought it was
it's a pretty fun item though.
it's yeah, it's some
And
hardcore zombie esoterica right here.
but what's really funny is that I always wondered whether he had actually taken a real photo. So this is from Shaun of the Dead. when Sean or Simon Pegg's character is wrestling with their first zombie girl, and Nick Frost takes a photo of her, or Ed rather. And so apparently he took a real photo and he put this up on his Flickr account. I feel like I had heard this mentioned before. It had been up for a while, but I don't really care. It's resurfaced. I think this is cool. And it just makes me probably unreasonably happy.
Yeah, it's just an awesome tiny detail, and it really made me want to have us review Shaun of the Dead. I know you're holding out one day soon. I hope we can talk about that movie. It'll be a 4-hour podcast, and
Hold out. Why don't we just do that next week? That's fantastic.
I would be super psyched to do it. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, maybe we do it. Maybe we do it next week. In other more serious news or not serious news, it's hard to tell whether this was, a humorous news article because I do know that there are some of those running out there even in China. But apparently, there was an alert from the Chinese state media that Ebola is not a zombie virus, basically reassuring their citizens that this is not what it is. Um, I'm sure this is totally. We'll see it on Snopes or something later on, but it was only a matter of time before something of this nature would come out. Seeing as how pandemics are so closely related to zombie outbreaks, but
And pure chaos. I
and
like that
pure
the article
chaos.
also had to tell people don't just try to mix coffee with raw onions, and that is not an effective cure for Ebola.
Right. I mean,
Some of this article
I
just made me
don't.
think they were making fun, they're poking
It
fun at
has to
China.
be. It has to be making fun of it, and but other than that, oh good, Ebola, zombies, go hand in hand. Um, but the next article, even funnier, but sort of weird as well. Did you happen to look at it?
Yeah, it's totally weird. What's the weirdest part about this to me is how long this article is, considering what the story is.
So, apparently it's like a significantly long article for this particular news item, if you can call it that. But um, basically, this story takes place in New Mexico, and there was this guy that was raising chickens. He shot the chickens in the heads and then gave two to his neighbors.
Shot the
I
chickens in
guess,
the head with a BB gun.
yeah,
An
and then gave.
important.
Yes, important. Sorry, not like a shotgun, a BB gun. Gave the chickens to his neighbors because he's being neighborly, so they could have like some good chicken dinners later on. Keep in mind these chickens that were shot with the BB guns in the head were wrapped in like plastic as well. So they put them in their freezer, and a couple of days later, right, like or a day later, um, the one of the neighbors opened up the freezer and found one of the chickens alive and really, really angry in their freezer looking at him. So he managed to get himself out of the plastic, obviously not dead. The BB did not do what it was supposed to do. So they let him live, read.
Actually, he is blind, or
He
she.
is blind. It's blind. It's a blind chicken, so he cannot read.
And they gave her away to another family who are
Yes,
now raising Rufina, which is now the chicken's name,
yes.
in a peaceful environment.
And she's hanging out. Apparently still laying eggs and whatever. But, um, yeah. So that's a lesson. Don't shoot a chicken with a BB gun, I guess, and don't put it in the freezer. I don't know what this even says, but
Like unplucked, I have no idea. I don't habitually kill chickens, but I would have thought like you're given a dead chicken, you should probably try to dress that.
I don't really know. But anyway, it lived after being in the freezer, after being plastic wrap. And you know what, I do approve of their idea of letting this thing live because, gosh, if you really want to live that badly, you should be allowed to go and eat your chicken feed and not be put in the freezer again. Just saying.
That seems fair.
Um, our next news item, it's a little bit of a teaser. We had heard about this, and I think we had mentioned this before, but there is a zombie-esque flick coming out soon, I think, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Abigail Breslin, and the premise of the film is that Abigail Breslin, who plays the daughter in this tale of woe and sorrow, has some sort of virus, a zombie virus, and apparently some stills were released from this from showing some very tender moments between Arnold and Abigail. And I guess it's supposed to come out sometime this fall or something like that.
I'm not sure when it's.
And anyway, the film's called Maggie. And I think it's supposed to premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival. So that's pretty cool. The makeup looks cool. I like Abigail Breslin a lot. I'm not sure about Arnold. And he's got some man boobs going on in the last still, but
Those are his pecs. It's all good. It's like
uh-huh.
70. Honestly, I am skeptical about Schwarzenegger, but
I'm
I
skeptical
s
about him, but I really like her, so I'm hoping that maybe she can redeem it.
he was good in Sabotage, a movie that he did last year about a SWAT team or a DEA strike force that was off the rails. Very much the Shield meets Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mm.
But he wasn't just his usual like, get to the choppa kind of thing. It was more of a nuanced portrayal. So I think he's maybe coming into his acting chops finally. It only took several decades and a stint as governor.
What? You didn't like him in Twins or Junior? Those are some serious dramatic scenes, my friend.
Sorry,
Uh,
no. Sorry, I'm gonna have to go
uh,
ahead and say no. I loved him in Commando and
yeah.
Predator and Terminator
Total
2.
Recall. Total Recall. Come on. He was great in Total Recall.
He was pretty good in Total Recall.
Um, no, I'm not. I think maybe he'll be okay in this. It depends on how they use him in the film, but she's an amazing actress. The makeup looks pretty cool. So I'm psyched to see it. I'll give it a shot.
I think a lot of any success for this picture is going to rely on him coming across believable as like the caring, and like his reactions have to be. She can't carry it. Is all I'm saying. Is they're gonna both have to bring it.
True, true. But hey, I'm still looking forward to it. I'm excited. We'll
Hmm.
see. Toronto Film Festival tends to have a lot of interesting stuff that they screen, so kind of looking forward to that too. And in other movie news, Life After Beth came out to limited release this week in theaters. Unfortunately, it's nowhere near where you live, Mr. Tiffin.
True.
So that's a shame. The New York Times reviewed it. I'm not going to go too far into this because I actually didn't want to spoil it because I am planning to see it sometime this week, hopefully. Didn't get the strongest reviews, but I would like to see for myself. So where's the closest it's playing to you?
Not within 100 miles. So it means, well, the last time I did a search, that includes San Francisco. Apparently, like that city
Really?
doesn't have this movie.
That
I'll do
can't be
another.
true.
I'll keep looking, but I also don't really want to drive an hour and a half to go see this movie.
Well, given that the reviews aren't exactly sparkling. I mean,
Yeah.
they're not bad necessarily, they're just not overwhelmingly positive. So, um, but I'll still give it a little. I'll give it a whirl. But I don't have to drive an hour to see it either. So, a little different.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
that's all
that
of our
is,
news, isn't it?
yeah, that is. That's it.
Plowed right through it.
We did.
So well, yeah. Are you ready to talk about Dock of the Dead?
I am ready to talk about Dock of the Dead.
I remember when the first time we talked about this, and I was trying to figure out what my criticism was when we watched the trailer many moons ago. And I remember while I was watching the documentary that it seemed like it was a lot of B-roll of zombies and a lot of like rock music, and it was like promising to be a high octane approach to telling the story about zombies in our culture and stuff like that. And I was kind of skeptical that it wasn't just going to be lots of zombie walk B-roll
Hmm.
and rock music. And I was pleasantly surprised that that was not what we watched. So this was kind of an example of the trailer not really doing the documentary justice, I think.
Well, and the person who made this documentary, Alexandre O'Philippe, he's the person that was responsible for The People versus George Lucas, and I thought that was, it was. I thought that was pretty well done, but. And I went into this, even though I thought that the trailer, I agree with you, it seemed a little too like I don't want to call it lowest common denominator, but that's kind of how it felt to me.
Hmm.
So I went into it with slightly higher expectations, and I came out having mixed feelings about it. So without further ado, do you want to dive in?
I thought we'd already dived in
No, really dive in, like
even
dive in
further,
deep.
like the
Yes.
layers of an onion.
Yes.
Here we
So
go.
I mean, so this is the thing. He was able to bring together a lot of the people that you would love to see in this kind of
Holy
documentary. I
shit!
mean,
Yeah, what
a
a
really, really impressive list of people. Like we have reviewed or talked about, I think just about every single person that was on the screen here for the
yeah.
most part. Simon Pegg, Bruce Campbell, Romero, Savini, Greg Nicotero, Robert Kirkman, Max Brooks.
Schlossman
Um,
had multiple appearances.
Schlossman. Oh, it was very funny. So I was watching this with Bill and some of my friends, and they were all like, "Who's that guy?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's the guy who wrote the zombie,
Zombie
the
autopsies.
autopsies." And they were like, "What are you talking about?"
It looks like he even went like on a book tour with Max Brooks because he was in 3 different locations. It looked like with Max
yeah,
Brooks.
yeah. So I think I cannot at all fault to pull together this group of people and to get any amount of their time was an impressive feat. So well done, Mr. Philippe. Um, and there was not as much. I mean, there was still a bit of the B-roll that was thrown in there, but not nearly as much as you and
It
I were
made sense.
anticipating.
The way they did it, it made sense because they were talking at that point of the documentary like about this phenomenon of the fans, and they used a lot of that B-roll for that, and they were using it also like the British like immersive zombie experience, which I was trying
Yes,
hard not to laugh at, but it
yeah,
was
that was pretty funny.
either way. So the zombie walk B-roll, while there was it was there, it punctuated certain parts of the film. It wasn't overbearing. Most of it was interviews and a few movie clips, And I wanted to hear what these guys had to say, and I didn't really want to look at B-roll that much while they were saying it, so it worked out. I think they found a lot, like you said, so many good people. They must have traveled a crazy amount, and they were really lucky that they sat in on a couple of panels. The one panel with Max Brooks, George
Oh,
Romero, and Schlossman was fantastic.
that was totally fantastic. And I think, Max Brooks is very well spoken. I think he is just fantastic at doing those kinds of panels. And he's often at Comic-Con and all those fun things, but I think he just does a fantastic job of conveying his thoughts in a very succinct and good and humorous way. Um, so that was very cool. In terms of the things that but this is the other thing. Because they got this group of people together, I was hoping that they would go a little bit deeper into interviews with them. A lot of what and I guess it depends on what the purpose of this documentary was. Is it to introduce people to the zombie phenomenon or to talk about it to people who aren't necessarily exposed to the zombie phenomenon? If that's the case, if it's just to give people an idea or a sense of it, I think it did what it was supposed to do. If it was supposed to be for people that are really into this stuff, such as, you know, said co-hosts on the show, I don't know that it covered anything really new. And to me, it's sort of like if you have the opportunity to talk to Romero and to Nicotero about and Savini about all this stuff, you have the opportunity to talk to people that were really the start of this whole phenomenon, especially the genre in terms of movies. Um, it would have been to me it would have been really nice to hear Nicotero and Savini talking a lot more about the progression, especially given that Nicotero is now on Walking Dead. That kind of thing I think would have been to me make it a little bit more rich. To me, it was a bit of a shallow dive
It was,
into
yeah,
this.
they definitely went entry level with it, and I guess they wanted to cast it as wide open as possible, get the most you know eyeballs on it. Like George Romero was commenting halfway through, he's like, "Look, you can say the word zombie to like a 10-year-old now, and they'll know what you're talking about." It's so wide open in pop culture that they could potentially get a huge audience for this documentary, and so I think that's what they were looking for by going so shallow with it.
Right. I did, and I did like hearing the debate about the fast versus slow zombie. It was very funny. And then Romero being like, "Well, yeah, I guess I broke my own rules in the beginning with Night of the Living Dead, but I didn't even know what the rules were then, and then I had to make them up, and then I had broken them already."
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty funny. And it
They
was
gave a lot of lip service to Romero inventing the genre and like how I mean, and I get it. It's all true, but they had a lot of people say it.
Well, they had a lot of people say it, but then he was saying, look, there were other things before I did this, and other people said that too. Like there were things that obviously were along the same idea, and they talked about Plan 9 from outer space, and that kind of thing. Which is more of an alien invasion type movie, but it's still the idea that a corpse is being like powered around by something other than that person,
What do you
So
think they were trying to prove by having like four people, like Simon Pegg, Max Brooks, and a couple of other people saying emphatically George Romero invented the zombie, and then four more people saying the zombie's been around forever.
well, no, I mean, those people said it had been around forever, but said that the genre Romero had made it, made it popular, or made it mainstream, or brought it to the public consciousness. And I could agree with you on that. And they were basically talking about which I'm sure Romero loved, but talking about there would be no um, Twilight without Dracula,
Hmm.
or that kind of thing. And it's always like, I think it's always about reinvention. And that, and there were zombies before Romero did this, but there weren't the Romero type of zombies, and that whole idea of a zombie invasion wasn't really there before Romero did what he did.
And
So
one of the talking heads, and I forget who it was, younger guy, made the argument that modern zombies wouldn't exist without 9/11 followed by Katrina in the early 2000s, and how that kind of like opened up the American population, American consumer audience at least, to this idea of the apocalypse and kind of busted it out wide open, which I thought was a very interesting point.
I do think it's an interesting point, and I and he was also talking about Katrina and that kind of thing. So the idea that putting these big disaster scenarios in, like, having people see all that kind of thing, having people see it in the media and on the news, and experience it themselves, makes it a more plausible thing to deal with. And then, as Max Brooks says, well, but you don't want to talk about the annihilation of the human race. It doesn't let you sleep at night. So zombies, hey, you can throw that out there in a variety of different scenarios, and people can have that thought process and still be able to sleep at night because zombies aren't real, which I thought was interesting. Um, I did also appreciate Max Brooks' observations about New York versus LA in terms of the survival of such an event, that New York was the hero city.
Yeah, of course, Matt Moak of from the Zombie Research Association,
Research
he
Society.
society. He was less sanguine about New York's survival, or at least New
Hmm.
Jersey's options.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't trust him as much because he couldn't wipe that sweat that was on his upper lip for the entire documentary. It was just like, come on, guys, give that dude some makeup or something.
Well, they put the camera right up into his face. Like he had the least uh,
I think it was done
sympathetic camera
deliberately
angle.
because he seemed to be totally insane, which is probably their intention. Um,
Well, what did you think in terms of? I mean, the content, like we're saying, we kind of we dug a lot of the interviews and the information that was getting passed. What did you think of the way that the documentary was set up in terms of like chunks? You know, there were some noticeable chapters or segments to it, and I I'm gonna withhold my opinion until you tell me what you thought of that.
what, in terms of the editing and how the flow of it went? Is that what you're?
Yeah.
I felt like, I mean, it's a little bit what I was saying before. I feel like they could have gone a little bit deeper into some of those interviews, and I would have been, and maybe that's just me because I'm interested in hearing that. It felt like it was cut together pretty quickly. Um, and some of it was almost like I don't know. It felt like obviously it was trying to build the story to a certain point of view. So you had this initial like, what are zombies and why are they so popular and that kind of thing, and going into more live action type things and the zombie walks. And there were parts of it that were definitely trying to get you to think a certain way about this particular phenomenon. And one of those segments that it was clear to me, is the woman who organized the zombie walks in Toronto seemed totally insane, right?
You think?
I mean, just a bit. And so it was sort of that. And then they go into the people that are, with some of the companies that build the doomsday shelters, and the stores that are outfitting people for zombie survival. And really, that's just part of what they do. They're making money off of it, which is, that's what you do. And basically trying to show these people are totally crazy, or some of these people are totally crazy. So I don't know. I feel like it could have been a little bit more even in terms of the storytelling, but I also understand that they had to kind of tell a story.
Yeah.
And then they round it out with, but it brings people together. People aren't on their iPhones during zombie walks, oddly enough, and all that thing.
I
I don't know.
In terms of like construction of the documentary, some things for me were a little bit difficult to keep track of because they borrowed a lot of footage.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, the we talked about this short film when it came, well, when we first found out about it, when we started the podcast, essentially. Cargo, the story about the
Yeah.
dad who takes care of the baby.
Okay, that is a super creepy little short.
It was creepy short, and they used a lot of that footage
Yeah.
in the course of this documentary, and they borrowed other footage too. And then they had that one guy who was going around doing man on the street interviews and going through like doing a zombie race in a biohazard suit.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't tell at times like what was being borrowed and what was like original material for the documentary. And I guess in the end it doesn't really matter. But it made it a little difficult to figure out what the point of view of the documentary was
Mm.
without a narrator kind of telling me what they want me to how they want me to feel about this in the end, and not knowing which parts of this were like original creation. It was difficult. And then the other problem it's not a huge that's not a huge problem, but I think it is a little bit like documentaries are supposed to, in my opinion, documentaries are supposed to be like a well-crafted kind of, you start here, you go through a series of dramatic or factual revelations, and then you end up in a different place. And I don't know that I ended up in a different place.
Well, yeah. And also, the zombie porn segment
There was a
was
lot of that. That was
really,
interesting.
and the fact that they kept bringing it in like multiple times, I'm like, well, yeah, okay, so you bring this woman in, you have her talk about this, and then they cut away and they don't really finish that up until much later, but they bring it up multiple times.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little strange. So
There was
yeah.
a lot of like, because they also had the sex counselor or whatever woman.
Yeah,
So
yet another
on
nut, obviously.
not
So
related to the porn star, this other woman who was also talking about how fetishization and fantasies about zombie relations. They went to some interesting and odd places. But as far as construction goes, I would just say like like you said, they started with why are zombies, the history of zombies in film with Plan 9 from Outer Space and all that kind of stuff. And then they went into, like you said, the live action, a bunch of pop culture stuff, the Simon Pegg, the Bruce Campbell, although those interviews come and go the whole thing. Then there's this whole thing on Haiti,
hmm.
and then they go back to in the movies and in The Walking Dead, which was kind of how what they summed everything up with in a way, was that big Robert Kirkman interview
Hmm.
and some Nicotero stuff. It was just a kind of a weird back and forth, I thought, and the sex stuff was mixed in there somewhere. I don't know. It's just I guess they had so much material that it does feel a little bit disjointed in terms of the passage of the story.
Right. And I guess, I mean, it didn't really cover any new ground other than other, interviews and things that have been written. I like, and that's actually what I was hoping to see within the documentary. Was there any new ground? Was there any new point of view? Not that I was fully expecting something like totally groundbreaking, but it would have been interesting to see that. So I don't know. I didn't. It's as I said before. I didn't think that it was. I had mixed feelings about it. I was really excited to see a lot of the folks that ended up in it. And there were definitely some really like interesting moments. We had already seen, I think, the clip of Bruce Campbell with marrying the couple,
Yeah, it
the
was.
zombie couple, and that was really funny. But like there's some really good moments within it, and I'm glad that I saw it. But I don't think that I didn't leave it totally feeling like they had blown me away and like what an amazing documentary. So
Yeah, they definitely. Well, they made up for a lot of the storytelling, lack thereof, with the amazing interviews and just coverage that they got of those panels. And yeah, so they
right,
definitely made
but
up for
again,
that.
if you manage to pull together, which they did, all these amazing people, I just would expect more out of it. That's all. And it was also, for a documentary, pretty short.
Hour and 15 minutes or something.
Yeah, especially given, I mean, in terms of editing something like that, that they had to have had a lot more material to work with. So I don't know, just interesting
Yeah,
in terms of what they chose to do with it.
I really like the shot for shot comparisons of like fan made Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
They were doing those like side by side. I had not realized that there were so many of those out there. The people have gone to the location, I assume, and recreated these shots.
hmm
It's so cool. I like that a lot.
And there was a really great comment from Bruce Campbell saying that, of all things that is like ruling cable right now, it's zombies, like in the show that he was on, which I don't know. I didn't realize that it was number one before this happened. Maybe
Yeah,
he was
Burn Notice was
exaggerating.
not that awesome.
No, it was not. But the fact that it's like zombies, it was very funny, his commentary on that point. I also liked, and I did know this before, but it was fun hearing him talk about it. Simon Pegg talking a little bit how Shaun of the Dead happened, um, because he was obsessed with this. And did you hear he has zombie nightmares?
That was yeah. I figured you
I
would
was
dig that.
very, I was very happy about that. Not happy that he has them, but just it's fun to hear when somebody else has them. But
Have you
just
ever
how
watched his sitcom where he kind of came up with or mixed fitted into the story?
Yeah, I did. Spaced. Have you ever seen?
Spaced. Yeah, I've seen several episodes. It's generally kind of a dark sitcom.
It's a dark sitcom. It's also, I mean, I watched it, because I think it was 2000, maybe
1999 to
90.
2001.
Yeah, so I mean, a while ago now, but and I watched it a few years ago, and it was already feeling a little dated then. So I think if you watch it, just
Oh,
take
it's like a
that.
time capsule now. It
Yeah,
feels super 90s. Yeah.
it totally does. And you can also see so much of, how he and Nick Frost have such a like cozy relationship acting. It totally makes absolute sense when you watch him in this. So just how like he you could already see the beginnings of Sean in some of these episodes. So yeah, no, that I thought that was like a fun little bit, a tidbit of information. Which, I mean, I knew before. I just had never really seen an interview with where he was talking about it, which was kind of cool. So overall, I mean, I think people who are into this will like this, but they're also, I think, going to feel that there's a lot that they could have covered and didn't. So, um, and maybe there's more extended interview coverage or that they'll release later on, which they often do with these documentaries, which I'd be curious to see. Um, you know, but no Boyd Banks, dude,
Yeah, he was noticeably absent.
and no Jeremy Gardner.
Yeah, well, I guess his movie had come out.
Yeah. So I thought he would have been great. He seems like he gives a good interview. Well, and that's the thing. I think, they showed a lot of the fan movies and things like that, and they talked a lot about like, and obviously they showed the clips from different things. But I think that actually the battery would have been a great addition to this for a lot of reasons, and partially because people are still making their own unique movies on a very tiny budget. So I think that would have been cool. Just saying.
You're right. I mean, they kind of went with the big budget. Um, like it's ruling the airwaves instead of it's still there are still new creations out there being made. That would have been an
Well,
excellent point.
Well, and it would have been an excellent point also because the comment that George Romero made, which was in his head, this is huge business. Obviously, people are banking on it being huge business. And in his head, zombie things should still be kind of small. And he was talking about, how there's always going to be these teenagers or whatever making their own little zombie films and people making their own creations. And that's part of the beauty of the genre, which I thought was a very cool thing. So I thought it would have been interesting to hear from the other part of it, not just hear it being commented upon by the big boys, so to speak.
Hmm.
Did you also notice that? Okay, and this is I did think it was very cool indeed, to see they showed a lot of footage of the actors from Night of the Living Dead, um, kind of talking a little bit about it and basically going around signing autographs and sort of reenacting things. But like Judith O'Dea, who plays Barbara, like I thought that was kind of cool to see her talking about it and all of that. But other than that, and other than like the porn star, you don't, and the crazy sex therapist, you don't really see a ton of women in this film or in this documentary, like normal women. Did you notice that?
It didn't actually like jump out at me, no. But yeah, there were a bunch of dudes talking, that's for sure.
Well, and I'm not saying that the dudes were all normal because there's obviously some odd ones in there, but there are a lot of women involved in making these films and obviously within this genre. And really they only showed them from like kind of a crazy pants point of view for the most part. I mean, they did have the one zombie scholar. What makes her a zombie scholar, I don't really know. But, it was a little, I don't know, a
Well,
little,
she was the one talking about what's his is it ethnobotanist? The
yeah,
guy
who the
basically that
serpent in the
the
rainbow.
Serpent in the
Yeah.
Rainbow was based on. She kind of knew what she was talking about. She rattled off the name of that pufferfish poison like it was very
Yeah,
well memorized.
that was impressive. That was really impressive. I was like, yeah, good job with that
Okay.
pronouncing.
So she was
Stuart and
good.
I, Stuart and I struggled with that one for the entire episode. Sorry. She was good, but the majority it was just like, okay, I don't know. It was just a little bit interesting. And they really liked that porn star. That's all I can say.
She got like 3 clips, and then
But
it was a clip of their movie.
oh man, and seriously, were you I was just like, really? How is that? I mean, I guess there is porn for every single person with every single proclivity. I'm not denying that. There's stuff out there that I probably don't even want to know about. But did that really seem sexy to you? It was kind of like, ew. It's so disgusting.
That was nasty. And the fact that the scene that we had to watch was Rick telling Carl to go and have sex with a zombie was
Yeah, that's
also not
how.
helpful.
No, no, no. But it was really funny when they first popped up on the scene and you realize who they're supposed to be. That was pretty hilarious. So, um, yeah. um, yeah, so there was that stuff. I don't know. I also have to say, Judith O'Dea and Russell Striner, the guy who played Johnny on Night of the Living Dead, they're looking pretty good. And I also really enjoyed the fact that they got the actor who played Bub
Mm-hmm.
to be on there. Um, he was like um, sorry, Sherman Howard is his name. He looks pretty good too. Like it's kind of cool to see these people still doing pretty well. And talking about just, I'm sure at the time none of them realized exactly how big this is going to be. And
Yeah.
then they're still involved in it. They're still going to cons. They're still signing stuff. It's kind of cool. But yeah, all in all, I would recommend it to people. I do think it's an interesting thing. I'm glad that it was not as abysmal as you were anticipating.
No, me too. Yeah, it was. I had pretty low expectations, so it surpassed those. I think my beef about structure really comes from I've been watching a lot of good documentaries lately, not about zombies, but about other things, and just
Ooh,
the
what have you been watching?
um. Well, my wife and I have been going to this one restaurant a few times in the last couple weeks, and it's been pretty slow. And the chef has come out, and we've talked about the restaurant industry, and then he's recommended to us a couple of documentaries each time we've gone in. And so the first time we watched Three Stars, which is about how restaurants get their Michelin stars,
Hmm.
and it takes a bunch of different restaurants around the world and talks about the process of getting the stars and kind of how the game is potentially rigged, or I don't know. It has a fairly objective approach, but it's a very good story, and it's told with a start and a finish. And then the other one was called Spinning Plates, which looks at three restaurants in the U.S. It looks at a three-star Michelin restaurant, Alinea in Chicago. It looks at a 154-year-old restaurant in the middle of nowhere in Iowa called Brightbox, and at a tiny mom and pop Mexican place in New Mexico, and kind of charts their ups and downs. And that was an amazing documentary,
Hmm.
Spinning Plates.
I have heard of that, but I have not watched it, so I'm going to add that to my queue.
It was very good.
Well, yeah, no, I think I have been watching the documentary about the Higgs boson, or discovering particle fever is what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched it?
Yep.
And I mean, it's done pretty well. And I guess maybe it was also because I had been watching part of that before I watched Dock of the Dead, and I was just like, okay, I know that this guy has all these resources, and I know that he can do a very good documentary, and it just felt a little bit thrown together to me. It didn't feel like there was as much care put into it, I guess, as some of these others that I've been seeing. But I
Who are
digress.
we to say until we've directed our first
Until we have
documentary,
directed our own documentary, we can't.
Reanimated, the documentary about us.
Yes. Um, but in any case, yeah. So I guess pretty short show today.
Yeah, it'll be a little tight. But next week, well, I propose to you, HA, that we can do two different things. We can either do Return of the Living Dead, which also got a really good pitch in that documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Return of the Living Dead? I think it was.
Yes, but it
Uh,
was like kind of the remake one.
It's a 1980s.
Yeah. Oh, and I
Uh,
remember this. I remember this one very well.
I've never seen it. I've never seen it.
What? You never
Um,
saw this, even as a kid? Like this was the one that was like everybody would talk about. Like, oh, did you?
I,
And you'd have to like sneak to see it because you're well. At least my parents would be very unhappy to know I was watching this. I watched this at a friend's house, um, because my mother would always be. Well, my mother never liked horror films, and so I think it really upset her that myself and my brothers really did like them or would like sneak around to watch them. Because then, of course, I specifically would have nightmares about them, but I would still watch them anyway.
well,
Um,
that is one potential option.
mm,
Or we could do Shaun of the Dead. I feel like they're both really kind of exciting options.
I am happy with either. I'm going to let you make the call.
Damn it! Where's a quarter? I need to flip a coin. I have a pound coin.
Well, that
The
has a heads and
queen's
a
the queen's
tails.
head. The queen's head is Shaun of the Dead.
Okay, well that makes sense actually.
It's Shaun of the Dead.
All right,
The
so Shaun
queen
of the
has
Dead.
decreed.
Okay, so but we'll do Shaun of the Dead next week, and we can do Return of the Night of the Living Dead the following week.
Awesome. Okay. Well then,
Cool.
folks, thank you for listening to this episode of Reanimated. I recommend that you go out and see this Doc of the Dead documentary if you haven't. It was it was interesting. It held my interest. I didn't want to like turn off Netflix and walk away at any point. I was committed and happy to watch it. I just, you know, I felt like it could have been improved, is all. And
Ditto.
yeah.
That's what I
And then
say.
so next week we're gonna do Shaun of the Dead. Finally, at this late hour, episode 49 is gonna be Shaun of the Dead, and so join us for that podcast. And you can also email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at reanimatedpcast on the tweets. HA, you got any parting words?
Nope.
All right.
No, no, no. I am psyched to be talking about Shaun the Dead with you. As you know, I adore this film. It's my comfort movie, or like, yeah, it's definitely my comfort movie. I watch this quite often, so
Like
this will
make
be
a
fun.
bowl of mac and cheese, sit on the couch, and watch Shaun of the Dead.
Mac and cheese, a Guinness, I'm all set.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, then, until next time, guys, Reanimated, we out of here.
Ciao.